I know most of our interviews are of pizza makers, but there are just folks in the pizza industry who have done cool things, and Scott and his family fit that bill. We start the conversation off by talking about Scott's father, Pete, the man who started it all. This is an amazing episode, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, and remember to always ask, what's good dough? I wanted to start the conversation off with Pete, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I don't know a lot about him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what he looks like. Not a big social presence prior to you taking over the company. And so tell me about what kind of man this person was, and we'll kick it off there.
Sure. Well, happily, we celebrated his 87th birthday. Still a feisty, stubborn Sicilian like he has always been. Generation from 37 is when he was born. And his family came over on the boat from Palermo. So the family always did some sort of enterprising with food. Matter of fact, his family was very involved with the pasta industry in the U.S. during the wars. So they had a St. Louis plant. I believe they had a Chicago plant. So the Palazzolos and the Vivianos were pretty impactful in the pasta industry in the U.S. also. A lot of people don't know that.
Is it still around?
No. It's been sold off to various companies. But no, so there's a lot of background and history with that. How he got started with this type of setup is his family, being Sicilian, they had tons of recipes. So there is, in Cincinnati, there's a church called Sacred Heart Italian Church. Mm-hmm. And the Palazzolo family loaned them twice a year their ravioli recipe. And they would do a fundraiser twice a year, their meatballs, their sauce.
When you say loaned, they let them borrow the recipe for a day, make the stuff, and then take it away?
Well, not necessarily that way, because the family still made it, so nobody else still saw the recipe, right? So they allowed them to sell it.
More of a licensing model
yes.
for the day.
So they helped the church do a fundraiser.
Got it. Okay.
So they would, the whole family, they would be in there for a week making meatballs, making sauce, making ravioli, shredding Romano cheese by hand. And my dad was a mechanical guy. He's an engineer. So even when it came time for the old school ravioli machine that they bought, he said, I can make it better, I can make it faster. So even for that, tore it apart and did that. Well, he noticed after a number of years that he was the person who was appointed the honor of hand shredding 400 or 500 pounds of Romano cheese with a hand grater.
And when you get to doing that much volume, you get to thinking there must be a different way.
Yeah, well, it was a little different. So while he was honored with this every year and loved it so much, he noticed that his father off in the corner was sitting in a chair drinking coffee the entire week, just kind of overseeing everyone to make sure everyone was doing their job. And my dad realized, hey, Dad, next year I'm going to be sitting in your chair with that cup of coffee. And he goes, you're not. You're going to be shredding this cheese by hand. Mm-hmm. Unless you can come up with something that can do this for you, you're going to be shredding that. Game on. So in quiet, at his home workshop, he continued to make something because there was nothing on the market. This was in, I think, late 70s. There was nothing on the market that would do that was durable enough. And he hand-turned this drum on his lathe that had these little teeth that turned, and it just shred this Romano cheese. So in quiet, he built this thing, got it delivered to the church right before anyone got there for the other fundraiser that was coming up. And when his dad showed up, he was sitting down drinking a cup of coffee, and he goes, don't you have work to do? And he goes, the cheese is already done for the week.
Pull me a cup of coffee, Dad.
So it was a love for him to create things, but I think this more was a father-son. I'm going to show you something. Yeah. So, and then from there, there's family all over the country, Detroit, different places that had Italian restaurants. And through family reunions and meetings, it came about like, hey, Pete, I heard you made, and he was the go-to guy to fix everybody's stuff, cars, whatever it was. Can you make something for me? So it was not a surprise to anybody in the family that he came up with something.
Sure.
And he said, well, could you make something for soft cheese? Yeah. So then he started working on that. And it was mainly to build some equipment for family members and some friends who had restaurants.
Was it just the next iteration up or a completely different machine?
It was a completely different one because the first one was just for hard cheese. This one was something that was going to be more accept a full-size block of cheese because he saw a gap in the market. Even though he wasn't like this big marketing guru and spent a lot of time looking at what other restaurants were doing, he knew the pain points in a restaurant and figured, I can do it faster. But if I can do it faster and I'm going to take this whole brick, I've got to build one heck of a machine that can withstand it and last.
Let's double click on that because people listening in, they may not know what your company is about. Palazzolo's Cheesehog. Please correct me if I'm...
Palazzolo's Cheesehog, yes.
And they don't realize that the unique selling proposition is you don't have to cut up a block of cheese.
Correct.
One of the unique selling propositions.
Correct.
But contrast that to what other cheese cutters are doing. As a pizza maker, I'm a firm believer that a great product starts with great ingredients. And when it comes to olive oil, there's nothing better than Cordo olive oil. Made from California-grown olives picked at their peak, Cordo brings a fresh, vibrant taste that really enhances your dough, sauces, and the overall flavor of your pizza. That's why so many pizza pros choose Cordo. If you're ready to see what it's about, sign up for a free tasting today. Just click the link in the description. Your taste buds will thank you.
So typically in the industry for many years, what people do, and there's still a lot of people who do it today, because it's the way they've always done it, they have the attachment that connects to the dough mixer. And they will get a 6-pound brick of cheese, and they cut it up a few times, and they feed smaller size blocks in, and they push it in there, and after 3 or 4 blocks, their hand's hurting because of the handle hit them there. So he realized all of these different things that were going on at the time. And during that, there was still a switch where people were going to pre-shredded cheese because shredding cheese became laborious. So he kind of just put the best of both worlds together and said, you know what? I want to be able to get a 6-pound brick. I want to cut the plastic out, throw the plastic away, put the brick in, and I just want to pound through a whole brick and have a machine that's durable enough that's going to stand the test of time for a restaurant owner. And if it's got his name on it, he wanted to make sure that people weren't going to have those issues. So that's how the evolution of the Palazzolo Cheesehog GS1 for Greater Shredder 1 came about in '85.
And I'm curious to know, but like when you said GS1, I didn't even think about it, but like was the name Cheesehog back then too?
Back then it was built by Palazzolo Manufacturing.
Just that.
And it was the Palazzolo GS1.
Okay.
So Greater Shredder 1. Okay. Now, the interesting part is it's still known as the GS1, even though we've had different iterations. So from time to time when somebody calls and says, hey, Scott, can you sell me a part? I've had this machine for however long. It's a GS1. No. Can you look me up? I'd always chuckle and say, well, my dad's brilliant with the machines, but we never changed generations. So can you send me a picture so I can tell you what year that was made? And they'll send me a picture to my phone, and I go, okay, you've got a 1985 to 1999 tabletop model. That's the original design. Okay. Yes, that fits.
So you have that locked in your brain of a database?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it pretty easy? You can easily see it?
Yes.
There's a huge difference from generation to generation?
Correct.
Okay.
And that helps me gives me a general idea of, maybe tips or advice. Because sometimes in a picture, I'll see something too, like, hey, I see a split in your cord. I'll zoom in on the picture. I just want to give it a little health check. And they're like, what do you mean? Send them another cord, or whatever it is it's going to take to get everything safe and fixed. But, that was his goal was, I want to build a big machine that does this and can handle this for pizzerias. Mm-hmm. And that was back in 1985.
Okay, so from 1985, we had a man named Pete who said, I'm going to make this great invention for the world of not just pizza, but anyone who relies on a lot of cheese use. Mm-hmm. But I imagine that majority of your customers are pizzerias.
Yeah, pizza, Mexican restaurants do a lot of stuff with this as well, yeah.
Okay. And so why was it so important for him to say this has to perform? Because I think that's another one of the unique things about your company is that they stand the test of time. And that's it goes back to the root of it has my name on it. Why do you think that was so important?
Well, he had a lot of hobbies, working on cars. He used to build VW trikes. There was a big, cult following of trikes in the 70s, and he would take old VWs and turn them into three-wheelers. And he over-engineered everything he did. He had a lot of pride in, I came up with this idea, I made this. He didn't need a pat on the back from anybody. It was for him. He needed to know that he built that and he was doing somebody right. Now, when it came to building something and selling it to somebody in commerce, and now I'm taking money from them, those expectations just got greater.
Yeah.
So the amount of pride and honor that he felt just to do the right thing every day for himself, now he had an obligation for his customers.
I feel the same way in some sense when I get asked, can I buy a pizza from you? I'm like, I'd rather give it to you for free right now. Because I don't want to take your money and have that thought in the back of my head, like, am I there yet?
Correct.
And so I totally get that. It's all about the product. It's all about being able to stand on its own 2 feet and like have no marketing around it and just be like, this is what it is. This is what I've created. I believe in it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when you go back to even like pizza expos, I don't remember, but I think it was the very first pizza expo or the second pizza expos was his first time exhibiting the machine.
Wow.
And it was mixed reviews. It's like, what are you doing? Everyone's buying pre-shredded now. And even back in the 80s, he was like, well, you understand there's anti-caking agents, there's preservatives, and I just want to cut a bag open and dump it, and do this. So, visionary going many, many, many years back. And his level of marketing, because obviously there's not Instagram in the 80s and 90s and most of the 2000s, was he would take a little ad out in the back of the Pizza Today magazine that would say, shred a case of cheese in 2 minutes. And people would call. Because all those people getting that magazine at the time, there weren't forums that they could go to. There weren't podcasts they could watch. That's where they got their education from was, what is this great chef telling me in this magazine? Let me flip in the back of the classified and see what other cool stuff came out.
Shred a case in 2 minutes. I think it's like
50 pounds.
50 pounds. You make a claim of like how many thousands of pounds in an hour? So
when you give numbers on shredding, it's always important that people have the understanding of how companies quote times. When we quote times on our, let's say our 1 and our 2 horsepower motors, we just say you're conservatively going to get 25 pounds a minute, because we realize you've got to feed a couple blocks in, you got a tub, you got to grab it, you got to move it over here, put another tub in there, shred through. We're saying at that casual, not hyper speed space, you're going to pound through 25 pounds a minute, a case in 2 minutes. So typically what we advertise is shred 100 pound in minutes, because in 4 minutes you're shredding through 100 pounds conservatively with our manually operated machine.
Yeah. I'm sure you've stress tested it though.
Oh, sure. If I was just going to put a garbage can underneath it and just feed blocks, yeah, that's where you're going to see the 50s and the 60s, and because you're just literally just pounding through it as long as the machine doesn't stall.
Yeah.
And that's where I say the difference of kind of how our marketing and our advertising tactics is. We want to make sure we're saying conservatively you're going to do 25 pounds a minute. So that sets in your mind how long it takes. And when we do get often asked, well, how is so-and-so doing 65 pounds a minute? That's a wonderful question I'd ask. I'd like to see the video myself.
Undersell, over-deliver.
Absolutely.
Right. That's amazing. And for people who still don't know what this is or haven't seen the viral videos on Instagram, it's like a paper shredder for cheese.
Basically. Yeah, absolutely. You will go through, when I say conservatively, a brick of cheese is 6 pounds usually. Provolone, you go up to the 8 pounds, a little bit taller. But you're going to go through, 4 to 6 bricks in a minute, pretty conservatively. And the reason I specified the manual machine, because that's the manual machine. That's the top seller where most people are pulling the arm down themselves. There is also a model that we have that we invented as well. It's the automatic one that it's air driven. So we provide the air cylinder and all the tubing and valves on the backside.
Let's talk about pan pizzas for a quick second. What are you using to press out your dough? I found out that whatever fat you use greatly affects the flavor of your pizza. And that is why the only brand I trust with my pizza is Cordo olive oil. Taste is everything, and other brands and other fats pale in comparison. Do you want to taste the difference? Go to cordo-olive.com using the link in the show notes. You can purchase a bottle there, or if you're an operator, you can get a free tasting. Just message me and I'll connect you with them. I'll leave my contact in the show notes. Thank you, Cordo Olive Oil, for sponsoring the podcast.
All you do is plug it up to a compressor, and that thing's going to shred conservatively 50 pounds a minute.
Yeah.
Because you're just feeding a brick in, pushing a button, and watching.
Pizza makers, if you're looking for a premium pizza cheese, Baccio cheese is the game changer you need. With a kiss of buffalo milk, Baccio delivers unbeatable melt and stretch for your perfect pizza every time. Plus, with a Baccio Gold Club Rewards program, you earn cash back for every pound of cheese you buy, up to 18 cents per pound. So the more cheese you use, the more you earn. To request a sample, use the link in the show notes and make sure you tell them What's Good Dough sent you. In a day and age where labor is so high and yet customers demand the utmost quality, this is the perfect tool because, like you said, most bagged cheeses have the anti-caking agents. I've shred cheese myself, regrettably. Like, it's taken me hours. Food processor just doesn't do the work because it's overheating and it's I'm not getting the right grate. But also, like, I can only do so much in that small food processor. I did the Pelican head, the mixer attachment, for the first time, and I was amazed at how slow it was. And not only that, but I had to cut these mozzarella blocks into like small pieces, and that already is a challenge because you're working with a knife and it's not easy. So that invention is just genius.
Well, there's a couple things you got to think about. There's many selling points. So you mentioned that you got to cut it with a knife. You know, I spent many years managing people and managing teams, and I mean, let's face it, when you're not looking, people don't always do things in the safest manner. So your point of cutting it with a knife, this takes the knife out of their hand.
Right.
You don't have potential risk management issues, insurance claims, workman's comp claims. Just cut it out of the plastic, drop it in. So there's a lot of selling points to it.
And part of like this amazing ability is due to the fact that you all use super quality materials, stainless steel, cast aluminum. Why are those important in this story when Pete chose to use these materials?
So you think about it like a recipe for a pizza. If you want a better tasting crust, you have to do more prep work to it. Takes a little bit longer.
Takes some
you have
time.
to have tighter controls to do that. And you also have to be using premium ingredients. The same thing goes with every one of your toppings. So when you say, hey, I'm trying to come up with the price of my machine or the price of my pizza or the price of my product, I got to figure out what my costs are for that.
100%.
And I want everyone to be satisfied with that.
100%.
So being, again, an engineer, we never wanted that question of quality USA workmanship and materials. We never wanted there to be a question. So we made sure that we found the best sheet metal fabricators. Fortunately, they're 10 minutes from where I live, so I can go check on them. And they've done our sheet metal work for probably 30 years. We went out and invested and designed our own hopper lids and lower housings, and we own our molds. And we selected a foundry that has done those for 20, 30 years also, pouring those molds. We have stainless steel castings also. Those are also done in Ohio. So when you do that, you're able to pop in and out and verify the quality control yourself when your product's being made to verify it's being done. You're not going to be surprised when a cargo container gets dropped off at a dock and pier And the first person who opens it is a consumer. So when all of our parts are fabricated and we go through that, when we talk about our motors, we use American-made motors. We use Baldor motors. We use American-made switches. Everything we do. The one thing that we do not use on our machine that's American-made would be our blades. And people usually, gasp when I say, you just said you don't use something American-made?
I could take a guess.
German stainless steel blade.
I knew you were going to say that.
So anybody who understands knives and cutlery and anything, they're like, oh, okay, you just saved yourself there. So going back with buying the best, we want to make sure that we have a low fail rate because it's our brand. We are a one-product company. We've got one chance to get it right. And if you are a single unit operator, with confidence, we want to say, this is going to be the first and last cheese grater you're going to have to buy. If you want to buy a second one, I want it to be because you're opening up a second location, not because you're replacing a machine. So to that testament of top quality materials and workmanship, our family still assembles every machine 100% from start to finish. We're UL certified, which means we electrically test every machine ourselves, and our machines are also NSF certified for safety and sanitation. So we go through quarterly certification. So small company, premium products go through all the big boy certifications just like all the big companies do.
As they should. Are you familiar with the concept of steel manning something?
Steel manning?
Yeah.
I am not.
Where you argue against yourself.
Okay.
And I totally understand. I see the benefit in both. For example, Uni, an oven company that I've been working with for many, many years now, sponsor the podcasts. I'm an ambassador for them, and I truly love their product. But designed in the UK, made in China, right? And so could you make an argument for outsourcing this thing?
The benefit of outsourcing would be dropping costs. Things are cheaper to make, labor. That would be, I would say, the biggest plus. But at some point, when you own a business and you're shaking somebody's hand and you're eyeball to eyeball, you feel a lot more sure and a lot more confident when you know where everything was sourced, who put it together from start to finish. Does that answer?
It does. Absolutely. I don't knock quality at all. I am very pro what you're doing because of all the outstanding claims that I've heard. And the fact that, I've seen stories, heard stories of people asking you to come back, and maybe we should fill people in, right? Because along the lines with Pete's origin story, he chooses to do something great, well-deserved, and that is something with a word that starts with the letter R, retirement.
Yeah, he decided in his 80s, maybe it's time to retire. But this machine was and is his favorite child.
Out of how many?
Of my brother and I. And he would remind us it was his favorite child because it would never argue. He could always turn it off and walk away from it. So there are a lot of pros and cons. So working into his 80s and having those discussions, my mother had some health that was failing. He was in his 80s. It was 2019. He didn't really retire. He partially retired. He's semi-retired, and he still wanted to continue supporting his existing customers with their machines. He wanted to continue selling parts online because his customers were like his family. Matter of fact, when he sent his retirement letter out, it commented, "Many of you have been my family over the last X amount of years. I want to still support you in this manner." And that was 2019, late 2019. Well, what happened 3, 4, 5 months later in 2020? COVID shut the world down. So when you evaluate certain things that your selling points that you've got local vendors that you can go count on and visit and do things, and you're in your 80s, you're like, I don't think I'm going to be getting out of the house and going visiting people and doing all these things any longer.
And on the manufacturing.
And then on top of it, you want me to pay what now? My stainless steel pricing just went from what to what?
Oh, gosh.
American-made motors just went from what to what?
Yeah.
This just went from what to what? I can't get it in 4 weeks anymore?
Yeah.
I got to carry 6 to 8 months worth of inventory?
Mm-hmm. The game just changed.
That
the rules.
overwhelming, that the COVID business just was like, you know what? I've had a great run at this. I'm going to sell it. But also, during COVID, it's not a great opportunity to sell a business also, where many businesses are failing and closing and doing all those things. So he put it on ice for a little bit in 2020 and closed his business to figure out what he wanted to do. And when he closed his business in October of 2020, 2 months later, my mother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer at the end of December 2020. And she passed away about 30 days later. So when you look at, his series and his thought process of 80, he's lived a tremendous life, done some wonderful things, just an excellent human. I support his decision to say, this is my time. I got so many things that have happened. Let's sell. Let's do whatever. After a little bit of time passed after my mother passed, I worked with him for a number of years, so I already knew the ins and outs of the business. I knew most of the customers. Matter of fact, most of the customers still called me because they had my cell phone number when he was retired. We had a conversation about, hey, we want to continue the legacy. You built something great, and we don't think you know how great it is and how much you meant to the industry. We're ready to roll again, and we want to kick it off in about 90 days. Game on.
Yeah.
He was very proud, very excited that his favorite child didn't have to be sold. And then we haven't looked back since. So we've been running 2.5 years. Business is strong. When we sent our first relaunch email out, the outpouring of love through emails and phone calls, it was very, very cool. Because they weren't asking about me. They were saying, congratulations, Scott. How's Pete? I loved working with Pete over the years. I called him on a Sunday night at 7 p.m., and he answered the phone. He helped me fix it. I mean, those stories we hear at every trade show. We still hear. So when I answer the phone late at night, they go, just like your dad, you're doing the same thing. We're doing these things. So it was important for us, and this is the conversation that we had, we need to make sure we stay with the same high quality standards, workmanship, customer support, and no matter what, you always support the brand. No matter what, you will always support your brand. So our Palazzolo's Cheesehog with the pig, that is a federally protected trademark. We've had that since 2012. It's on every machine. We love it. People love our T-shirts that we give out. They love that stuff. Because people who've used the machine swear by the machine, and they know the impact that it has made on their business and the profits that they've made over the years. And the routine comments we get is, we're used to seeing the maintenance guy in our facility, but not for your machine. So it's another nice kudos when we've got machines that are, 30 plus years in the field, that somebody's ordering a blade and you go, man, your machine was made in 87. I just got one the other day. Your machine was made in 87? And you're just getting a blade? That's all you need? Works like a champ. I mean, you hear those stories all the time.
That's amazing. It is cool to see that, I would say. Those are great words to use. Because, you see your father's work. You see all the relationships built and his good name, his intent staying strong. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I think what's uncool is the patent expired, and people saw an opportunity, and they didn't step up to the challenge of building something that lasts. It seems like.
Well, I think time will tell. I mean, I think.
But you've already heard stories.
Oh yeah, so the things with patents, and we were asked about this because when you go to a trade show, someone comes, "Hey Scott, how you doing?" I look, and they come back and go, "Wait a minute, I just saw 3, 4, 5, 6 other machines, and there's a lot of similarity." And I always just say with a smile, "Guys, patents are good for 17 years. We're all good. There's no issues. It is what it is." So there's no hard feelings on any of that. I think the concern has always been when a customer says, "Well, what's the difference?" And I've got to look and say, "I can't tell you because I can only see the outside. I don't know what's on the inside. Did they follow through and use everything that we're using?" So maybe if I can help educate you a little bit, I'll tell you what we do. And then I go through, American Motor, this. I said, so maybe your questions are to ask, what kind of motor is this?
Scott, I find it very, very, very hard to believe that you or your father, knowing the type of background that you all have not purchased these imitation machines and just broken them down.
No, not interested. The reason I'm not interested, because, and let me back up on like workmanships and parts. I am not saying that you cannot get quality material from a different country. I'm not saying that you can't get quality workmanship from another country. And I think sometimes my words get twisted a little bit, and that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you want to compare a warranty, when you want to compare a longevity, and you want to compare a product, you do have to compare prices, number one. But when you compare prices, you have to say, am I getting the same thing for the same price?
Yeah.
So when I say, yeah, you're going to get 10, 15, 20 years longer,
you mean it.
You have a 1-year warranty on the motor, a 1-year warranty on the switch, same thing everyone's going to give you, but we're going to support it for the life of it. I don't say that because I think somebody necessarily makes an inferior model or machine. I think the big question mark can be a gamble for a small mom and pop. Sometimes it's go with what you know. Maybe everyone is making a fine product. I don't know, but I can tell you I get phone calls. I have phone calls in the past couple months where the conversation's gone something like, "Hey Scott, I need to know how fast I can get a Cheesehog." And I'm like, "Well, I'll ship it within 2 days of getting the paid order. How soon do you need it?" "I needed it 3 weeks ago when I bought my other machine." I'm like, "I'm looking at my records. I don't see a machine." No. I didn't buy your machine." And I'll go, "Oh, so you're buying another machine?" Mm-hmm. "Well, no, I've got return authorization to return it to that company. I'm not happy with it." I'm like, "Okay, I'll get your machine. Can I ask what it was doing?" And usually they don't tell me the name of the company. Mm-hmm. I'll just say, "Tell me what is it doing?"
Yeah.
And when they tell me, I'll go, "Oh, that's a XYZ." And they'll go, "Yep. How'd you know?" I said, "I know."
Known issue.
Yeah. So again, and that's not sour grapes. I think the coolest part of all the competitors to the market, I look at it as the ultimate congrats to my father. Big company, small alike, you did something, and when you walked away and retired for that year, it created a void in an industry. And it was a feeding frenzy of what we're going to do. So we don't question, no sour grapes, no worries about any of that stuff. You got to do what you got to do. If you make claims on durability, you've been around a couple years. We'll see.
It almost helped you with your relaunch when you took over because there was that demand that
it
wasn't
did.
being met.
Yeah, it created the void because, we're a small company. We weren't spending a lot of money on advertising. We don't have dealers that go across the country and go in stores and try to sell dough mixers and dough presses and dough ballers and all this. So we don't have that advantage, right? So now companies can go in and go, look at my portfolio of all this stuff. And it may be the first time somebody saw it. First time they use it and they go, oh my goodness, this is brilliant. This is the most genius thing. So I always look at that, and I'm being serious, all sincerity. My dad's a bad man. In 85, he came up with this. and the best we can see now
Yeah.
are duplication. So the whole category he's the godfather of the category. How about that?
That's great. And I love that it's all in-house. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand the use of distributors
Oh, absolutely.
and all of that, but it annoys me sometimes. It works when it works, and when it doesn't work, I'm just so annoyed. Like, I have to go through a distributor. I can't just talk to the manufacturer. I can't just get it straight. I'm right here, So I totally get that. One thing I wanted to ask is, you had mentioned during the pandemic, all of these rising costs sort of helped influence your father on stopping the business. Like, it was the perfect storm.
Yes.
I'd imagine, some of these material costs have gone up and shot back down a little bit. But still, we're at an age where everything's more expensive than it was before. So pre-pandemic, what was the cost of your machine? And post-pandemic, where is it at today?
Let's just stick with the 1.5 horsepower countertop. If my memory serves me correct,
Sure.
we were selling it at $37.99. We sell the 1.5 horsepower countertop right now for $4,800. So, total transparency, that extra $1,000 is all material. We took no additional markup in that.
No jig.
And that's still very aggressively priced, because for years when we were selling our machines, we did have a lot of points of distribution reach out with the desire to sell it. And a lot of the recommendations were, hey, you can sell it for this, you can sell it for that, you can sell it for this. And my dad was always just humble, like, here's what I've got in materials, I'm making a profit, here's what I want to do, but I need to make enough because I'm going to support this machine, for the life of the machine.
Yeah.
So we took that same thought process when we went to pricing. We just said, okay, I went to every vendor. I just said, hey, if I order this much, tell me what the price is. And I went back to everybody and I'd say, we're not a company that changes prices every 6 months, every year, every 2 years, every 3 years. So for the past 2.5 years that we have been in business since the relaunch, some of our costs have gone up. We haven't changed the price of the machine. We've absorbed it.
I think one thing that you said earlier was, comments first on what your father said, like, this is how much it costs. This is how much I need to make to be able to support that. Like, that is beautiful, right? That's as simple as business math is. And one thing you said earlier was, figure out what your end result is and figure out what the cost is and charge based off of that.
Yes.
Right? But you want your end result to be quality.
Sure.
You want your end result to also include lifetime support. This is what it's going to cost so that we can make everyone happy, from our suppliers to our team to everything.
Sure.
The first, I've taught like a number of pizza classes already. And the first one I ever did at my own house, I negotiated on price because this was the company's budget. We've always charged like $115 a person, $112. But this was the first time I was doing it at my house. It was for my wife's company. And they said their budget was $50. I was like, okay, let me just see what I can do for $50. I got through the class, and I realized at the very end, probably should have charged more. Because this is not the class that I want to be able to provide. I want to be able to hire 2 more staff. I want to be able to extend the time from 2 hours to 3 hours, right? And so there's nothing wrong with me charging more.
Correct.
It's so that I could put out the product that I want. Because people can put out a $65, $50 class. But you're going to get a $50, $65 class. I want to be able to put out a $150 to $200 class.
Sure.
And that's what I want to stand on, and that's what I want people to take away.
Sure.
But this is what I want to put out into the world. This is what I want to create. This is how I want to educate people.
Sure.
And if that's what it costs, then I will wait for those clients. But I will be able to put out not a class that costs 4 times more, but maybe 10 times more.
Sure. And I think even going back to pricing, and I've spoken with my father a lot over the years, back when I worked with him, like, how did you come up with the price? What do you do? And he said, very profound, we're a small business. everything I do, I think about another small businessman buying my machine. And they don't always have the deepest pockets as some of the big corporations maybe, or the tolerance to take a stab at a new piece of equipment that they haven't seen. It's a big investment for them. So he would do some forecasting and say, how many do I think I could sell a year if I take all those materials together and figure out I can offer this everyday price for the average mom and pop and feel very good about it. And you'll be surprised is we sell to a lot of chains. I mean, we've got chains that have they've purchased over 1,000 of our machines over the last 30 years. We've got chains that own 500. We've got chains that own 300, 400. Matter of fact, our largest order we ever had was from one chain. And it was for 350 at one time.
Wow.
Okay. And you don't build that kind of following or that loyalty from building garbage or not supporting it. So a few months ago, back in March, we met a company at Expo. Great conversation, lots of great conversation. And about maybe 2 months after Expo, they called and said, "Hey, Scott, I want to order a couple machines to try out. I'm very impressed with what I see. And just so you know, if it goes well, I'm going to finish the rest of my company this way." They had the machines 2 weeks, and I'm not going to say how many, but they supplied the rest of their chain with the rest of the machines after a 2-week trial. Because it is a game changer. It does make the difference.
Let's talk about that difference a little bit more, because we sort of talked about, using the best ingredients and labor quality, but I think we need to also talk about the fact that if you were to use pre-shredded cheese, labor aside, that has a cost to it too.
Sure. So there's a couple things to look at. So we actually, on our website, if you go to cheesehog.com, there's a savings calculator tab that we put on our website. The reason that we put that on there was because, we do own a business, but at some degree we are selling when we're interacting with people. And we want to make sure that people don't just think we're giving them a pitch or a line. We encourage customers to use their own experiences and their own costs to figure out how much money they may be leaving on the table. Mm-hmm. So if you go on that savings calculator, one of them basically says, are you buying pre-shredded cheese now? If you are, use this calculator. How many pounds are you buying a week? And can you find out how much your savings would be if you went the block? So just by selecting those two numbers of how much you're currently using a week of pre-shred and how much more you're paying for pre-shred, it'll tell you how much ROI or how much profit you're giving away over the course of a year. Mm. And a lot of people don't realize how that math works until I have somebody who, like I had in Vegas. It was a single unit operator. They were doing about 1,000 pounds a week, and I knew how the math was working as he was telling me.
Do some math right now. Okay.
But I needed him to. These are round numbers, so this will be very easy. He does about 1,000 pounds a week.
Okay.
He wasn't sure what the savings was going to be between pre-shred and block. So I said, it was in Vegas. I said, your cheese vendors are right over there. Go ask them.
Give me a ballpark number.
It ranges really on how much people are buying. Like, are they buying part of a company or is it a mom and pop? Okay.
Let's call it a mom and pop. Buys the bare minimum.
In his situation, it was one of the higher ends that we see. But the guy comes back and he has his head hung and he's like, I pay 50 cents more per pound for pre-shred.
And is that a month? 1,000 pounds a month or a week?
A week. So I said, okay, so do we need to pull the calculator out? He goes, no, I know that's $500 a week. I know that's $25,000 a year. And I went, okay, so let me explain. Based on that math, if you go on our calculator, it'll tell you the ROI of our machine cost on top of it. Mm-hmm. So when you look at a machine cost of $5,000 and you're going to save $25,000 a year,
your ROI
you're going to profit an extra $20,000.
Your ROI is in 3 months if you get the tabletop model.
Well, here's the interesting part. He goes, I didn't tell you the truth. I've got 5 locations doing that.
Wow.
So in his math, it was $125,000 he was paying for this. He didn't realize that. So not every case is that extreme. If you just cut that in half to 25 cents a pound, you're still $12,500. So as a business owner, Buy the machine. It's $5,000. You're going to put $7,500 in your pocket this year. Next year, 12.5, 12.5, 12.5, 12.5. Every year after that. It's a no-brainer when you have that. There's also another calculator that said, are you already shredding your cheese? Use your numbers. Don't use the numbers I'm giving you. It says, how long does it take you to cut down blocks and shred 100 pounds of cheese? Now, they can use whatever math they want, and they see the numbers. And when I ask people that question at trade shows, I will get people who tell me they can do it in 15 minutes. I got to see the video of that. But typically what we hear is 45 minutes to an hour to cut it out of the plastic, cut all the blocks down, and shred through 100 pounds with like a pelican head attachment or maybe a smaller tabletop unit. And I go, okay, you know how long it takes us to go through 100 pounds? 4 minutes. So you take 41 minutes of labor, if you're doing 100 pounds a day, times however many days, times $15 an hour, you can do the math that way also. But when somebody's already shredding, it's a different, I hate to call it a sales pitch because that makes it sound slimy, but it's a different pitch. So it's like, okay, I'm saving you on labor, right?
Right.
But you're also not now beating the hell out of your dough mixer, which leads to maintenance costs.
Right.
So you're saving on multiple aspects.
Those Hobart service centers are everywhere in the Bay Area. Yeah. I always see their trucks.
Absolutely. So there's lots of advantages. And I think when people really sit and talk to us, they understand, or the vibe that we get is the sincerity and the passion. I want to buy from you. I got to figure out I don't have the money to do this. Well, we do have financing options with a company. We don't use the big companies to do all the financing. We use a small company that does the financing. You apply, they'll give you the multiple options, and you select what works best for your budget and what you want to do. But what I can tell you is you're going to have that loan for a very short period of time. Your objective is to get that. Now, we do not accept credit cards for machine purchases either. So bank wires, check, whatever you want to do. Another 3%. So when you look at selling a $5,000 machine, that's another $150 of profit lost for a machine. And with how tight we are with margins and everything, that can be an issue. And then a lot of people will ask, hey, can you just charge me the 3%? Can you just do this? And I always ask the question, like, you're a businessman. Is this really so you can put it on your Amex and pay it off in a month? And you're really just trying to get points?
That's what I would do.
Yeah. Just pay for it with a check.
Yeah.
And people usually do. So when we send an invoice, there's a payment link. They click on key and ACH information, and it's paid. Okay. So everything we do is to try to keep that cost down for the end consumer as well.
So I think it's a no-brainer. It almost seems like. I guess my question for you now, moving forward, is you've taken over the company, starting in 2022.
Yes.
Ish. Well, for starters, you wanted to keep the legacy going. You saw that there was a void.
Absolutely.
But did you have this grand vision of just hey, I'm going to keep preaching, this is an obvious buy for pizza makers and Mexican restaurants? Or was there a grander vision in play? Not that this isn't a grand vision at all, because it clearly has influenced the market so much.
So the key motivation behind all of this was my father's legacy. It wasn't about dollars and cents. That was the driving force. I also have kids that are part of the business. I have a wife that's part of the business. So you can say the business has grown from employee headcount. But the other part of it is there are 6 companies that we're competing with. That means they've done market research. That means there's a bigger piece for us also.
Interesting.
So it changes from stay true to the values, but let's have some fun competing with everybody else, because we do build the superior brand.
Where do you see yourself, or how do you see yourself? What is the game plan to winning this competition? That's me. Is curious. I'm curious about that.
Well, even though we talk about competition and all that other stuff, like I said, for me, it's not a hateful. It's more just my sarcastic personality, having some fun, and let's all get some jabs and get some cool.
In the spirit of competition, it's the spirit of competition, but there's also a winner in every competition.
Yes. What I will tell you is this category will not go away. The dough mixer has been around for 70, 80 years and is virtually the same dough mixer. It's a staple in the industry. So we already knew this was a staple in the industry. There's just so many people who don't know. And we've got a lot of people that are helping us evangelize that this is a category now. So when they do research, my phone calls that I typically get now is, hey, I was doing a Google search on something like this, and you were the third person that came up. I said, great, you called me. Why'd you call me? Because it said the original on it, and I was tempted. So we have some jokes and all that stuff. But, the goal is for something to be a legacy, it has to move on. It's got to move on beyond me. And that's why my kids are involved. My son started mechanical engineering school at University of Cincinnati. I've got 2 daughters with degrees. I've got a 16-year-old. And they all have their part in helping out when we get rushes and we get stuff done. So, they have the same pride in their grandfather that I have in my father. Well, let's do this. They've been to trade shows with us. They all walk around with Cheesehog T-shirts. And what they do is, my plan for the Cheesehog T-shirts with them is just to brand and market so they see more of a preference. Their plan is, I can go eat all these samples and Dad won't bother me at the booth. So, kind of makes them happy. They go get to sample everything, but while they're sampling, people are like, what is that? My kids will walk them back. Hey, let me show you. So we have some fun with it also.
That's excellent. On the note of branding, original cheese hogs, right? Mm-hmm. Where did the name even come from? Because you said it wasn't introduced till later.
2012 is when we officially got the trademark. No, I think my dad understood, if you go from 85 to 2012, that's a pretty successful run in a new category, a new product from a small company. And he's a funny guy too, and he decided he wanted to have some fun with it too and come up with a cool name. He actually drew the pig. He did the logo. The Palazzolo's name's always been on there, and when you say it, it is kind of funny, and there is kind of a chuckle to it.
There's a ring to it.
But what does a pig do? What does a hog do when you go to a field? If you look at it, just devours everything in its path.
I love it.
So if you put a block of cheese in it, it devours it. So it's a cheese hog.
I can't help.
And it keeps on ticking. Oh, yeah. When we started bringing T-shirts to our trade shows, people were just going crazy. Like, oh, my goodness. Because we reversed the image of it, what the logo looks like. And like, oh, I love it on black. I love this. Do you think you can have can I get a hat? Will you do a hoodie? You should have an apparel store. And I'll look at my wife. My wife's like, don't give him any ideas. But we routinely get asked that because it's just fun.
I love it. Okay, so going back to this whole thing of a family business, mm-hmm. right? You have some immediate family involved, mm-hmm. But your involvement is quite unique. Mm-hmm. You still work your full-time job.
I still work my full-time job. Yeah.
My goodness.
Yes, so we are busy. So I work 2 full-time jobs. There's a transfer of knowledge going on with everyone in the family. And that is something that, the tribal knowledge that passed from my father to me for years working side by side. And, you get a machine together and you turn it on and you test it and it tests fine, mm-hmm. but something doesn't sound right. There's no book you can teach.
You got to be able to.
You have to do that.
Yeah.
So the coolest part is my 18-year-old son a few weeks ago built a machine. And I was in there kicking back on the couch, and he comes in. It was a Sunday night. I think it's like 9 o'clock. He's like, Dad, I got a problem with machine. And I always do the final testing, all the final boxing, all this stuff. He's like, I said, did it pass? He goes, yeah, it passed test. I said, is it vibrating? He goes, no. I was like, what's it doing? He goes, it just doesn't sound right. So I went out there, and I saw exactly what it was. It was something little simple with a washer, a loose washer that was sitting on the tabletop, that the machine was sitting on top of it. Made it. But I was so like, wow, he's getting it. He's got it.
Yeah.
Same thing with my kids and my wife. When they're prepping parts and they're doing certain things, they know. My wife was putting these brackets on these bolts that we have. And she's like, hey, this one's wrong. And of course, I'm like, well, how do you know it's wrong? And then, we've been married 28 years, so a typical wife to husband, it doesn't fit. That's how I know it's wrong. All right, there we go. Let's put it to the side. So, then again, there's still situations where, something may have been crushed in shipping or something that may have happened, when it arrived to us. But no, there's a certain amount of tribal knowledge that needs to be transferred. I always plan to be involved in the business. I love my day job, love doing what I do. My day job is all around selling American workmanship also. So there's a lot of parallels in what I do between both jobs. So I do get tired from time to time, but the pride and the family involvement makes that tiredness go away pretty quickly.
Sure. I'm sure the cheese hog excites you. It sounds like your day job also excites you, and that helps keep the energy going. But like, where do you, like, if assuming the knowledge transfer happens seamlessly, and given the two paths, do you ever see yourself taking one over the other, seeing, okay, it's in good hands with my family now, or hey, maybe I want to leave my job and focus full time on the cheese hog? Where do you see that fork in the road?
I don't know. We haven't really gotten that far. We've been working more on streamlining and simplifying things. So obviously I'm out here in California with you today, but I've actually been out here since Wednesday. Back home, we're still continuing to build, ship, and test machines. So this is the first week where I haven't been there for every test. So you do learn to give some of those things up. If it passed the test, it passed the test. So did that machine get delivered okay? Okay. You got the next machines built for next week? Because I'm not going to be back for another week. This is a big week for our company, actually, because I'm not there. So, but I know that they have the same pride in doing everything, so they're going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So I don't have an answer on time frame. I mean, interestingly enough, when we sent out our first email to relaunch, we had a big company call and offer to buy us. They offered to buy us because they were developing their own version. They hadn't launched yet, and they wanted to put the brand on it. So if that doesn't tell you that there's value in the brand, I don't know what does. We respectfully declined the offer, but it was interesting and flattering at the same time knowing that you were doing the right thing.
Was the offer not just enough, or is it just still heart set on keeping the legacy alive?
It was legacy. So again, you're not just selling the brand, you're selling a name. So.
Yeah.
But we didn't get the offers and figures and all that stuff, just not interested.
I see. You didn't even get there.
Nah.
Gotcha.
Nah.
So even if the price was right, there's no price that's right.
No. I think everyone has a dollar amount for certain things. At this point in time in my life, I don't. It's more fun for me when we've gotten some big orders to call in all the troops and say, all right, everybody, let's get in here and get this done. And then when you look around and you see my wife, I say kids, but my kids, again, 26, 24, 18, not kids, but everyone pitching in and doing their thing to contribute. It's kind of a proud parent moment, too.
Absolutely. I can only hope that my daughter is as interested in pizza as she is today. She loves making pizza with me, and she loves getting her hands dirty, and still doesn't mind posing in front of the camera. Right? Sure. But I'm definitely savoring these moments in the event that she's totally not down to be in the kitchen in the future.
Absolutely. It's always, pizza is recession proof. It's always going to sell. People always order pizza. I think the transformation it's been a long time coming because there have been a lot of key chefs and big names that have always put more pride in their dough and their ingredients. But I think now, for the single unit operator, the community is very supportive of each other, which is the interesting part, that you do have well-known chefs willing to help a brand new guy on, here's what I do with my dough, here's my tip, here's my secret, here's the tomatoes I use, here's the olive oil I use, here's the cheese, a lot of those things. Yeah. So I think, a lot of companies selling things by the slice now because they have a better quality product, so they can get a little bit more off a slice versus selling a whole pie.
It's interesting you said that because like everyone talks about how we're living in the golden age of pizza, and I often think like, oh, it's because we have all these new creations or like machines available to us. But part of it is the storytelling that we do as humans, and our ability to communicate through podcasts and social media and video is that we're sharing these secrets that allow us to elevate one another.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm in the moment of quitting my job. Like I'm there. I'm at the last quarter mile.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I want to focus on what's good to full time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have spoken with my wife, spoken with my director, and we're just letting the time pass by to when everything's fully the knowledge transfers there.
Sure. It's exciting news, nerve-wracking news, probably some sleepless night news too.
Oh, 100%.
There's a lot of uncertainty with it. And I mean, I guess my advice for you, even though you didn't ask, would simply be, what is your vision and what won't you compromise on? Because at some point, if you've got a starting point of a company, if for some reason something is not working out, do you have the guts to pull the plug before it crushes your life? And I think when you listen to a lot of these industry experts in restaurants, they'll tell you, hey, I've got 16 locations now, but over the years I've closed 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. The cool part of that, they're admitting, I didn't do everything right. Yeah. I just knew when it was time to close that angle because this profit was going for that. So as you evolve, you just start setting those bumpers up. You know what to do. I'm sure you'll be fine.
I'm not going to give you an answer right now because I definitely am still crafting that message in my mind. But for those of us who are currently, we talked about the double dip earlier, mm-hmm. and it's that has sort of had like a negative context, but in a way it sort of applies that we are focusing on 2 things. Mm-hmm. From someone who does it and says, I have 2 full-time jobs. And I'm sure there are people listening out here who are living a similar life, and I am currently living that life for the time being. Like, mm-hmm. What do you do to keep yourself? I easily get distracted. I'm mm-hmm. like, oh, crap, I'm doing my work, and then I think mm-hmm. about pizza, mm-hmm. right? I can't imagine, like, that sometimes conflicts. Mm-hmm. But, like, what do you do to keep yourself going and sane and compartmentalize is the word?
Well, as silly as this may sound, I spent 20 years in retail. And I worked for different Fortune 500 companies, from store manager, DM, GM. And I didn't have a mentor that ever taught me this or said this to me. But what I realized is I repeated this message often to all the people that worked with me, for me, my peers, whatever. And they have told me that I kind of mentored them on this aspect. And here's where it goes. When I was a store director for Circuit City many, many moons ago, and I had 75 employees, I personally felt liable for their livelihood every day. And when I would go home, drive home for the day, I would say, did I do everything I should have done to make sure they got their job done, to make sure they got them, so they're not going home stressed tonight? And as I got promoted and moved through the ranks, your scope is much larger. Now it's not 80 people. It's a lot more. So my driving force was, and there were days where I'm like, God, I ain't getting anything done today. Hope I didn't impact anybody's life. I had a visit with this person today. I need to over them. Hey, did we cover all the loose ends today? I need to make sure I can sleep tonight. So when you look at my day job, I am the one person that sells for my day job. And we've got a staff of 80 to 100 people. And I'm not in the management role in my day job. But if I don't produce sales, exactly. So I feel that personal accountability to make sure I have, like it or not, and it's not a bragging thing, I have impact on some people's livelihoods. It can be an unhealthy pressure if you allow it, but I actually thrive off that. So when I need to switch hats and leave my other job at 4:30 or 5 and go do Cheesehog stuff and check out on stuff, I am now focused on the livelihood of my family, but I'm also able to teach them business 101. And sometimes when we make decisions and how we make decisions, how it impacts as an operator's life who has employees that work for them. So it's a complete transfer of, sometimes people will call me and say, how fast can I get a hog? I'm like, I got them built right now. I'll ship it in 2 days. Make sure the fund's clear. I'll ship it out. Do you really need it in 3 days? Oh, no, I don't need it for a couple months. And I had one the night before I flew out. The guy has an old machine, like from 85, and the motor went bad on it. And he goes, I was just waiting for this machine for the motor because I didn't want to put any money into it. I wanted to buy a new one. I said, are you down? He said, I am completely down. My machine is not running. I said, here's an invoice. You pay me tonight. I will build it tonight myself. I will pack it tonight. I will make sure it's ready to ship. So while I was flying to San Diego, that machine was picked up the next day because I knew that impacted his livelihood and his personnel.
Wow.
And that's what we live by.
Forgive me for laughing because I thought you were asking him if he was down to fix that old machine because you were like, I can fix this and it'll run like
Well, that was the first conversation. Like, well, what do you mean you were hoping the motor was going to go bad? He goes, because I like the new ones. I like the looks of them, you know. So, yeah, we have a lot of those conversations. But, and again, not trying to digress, but I can tell you right now, we could call an owner up of a franchisee of a company. Her name's Candace. I went to a convention of that large company about 2 years ago. She comes up and talks to me and she goes, I've got a Palazzolo Cheesehog that is dead and I have to buy another one. But somebody came in and sold me a different brand. I said, Candace, no worries. No worries. When did you buy it? And it was like 8 years ago. And I know that's our belt drive model. That's not even a motor and a gearbox. It's belt driven. It's a motor. And I said, well, who told you need a new one? A maintenance guy. I said, like a service company or an employee? Service company. I said, they told you needed to spend $5,000 to get a new machine because our machine was broke. She goes, yeah. I said, all right, here's what I want you to do. You've already bought your other machine. We're good. You and I are going to get that machine running when we get back. She goes, I want to return this other machine because it's horrible. And so I said, what's it doing? She told me what it was doing. And it's that same known issue. So I'm like, okay, it's doing this. So she gets back to town. No joke. Sends me a message. And she goes, what do I need? I send her a list of tools. And we were on the phone, and she was taking the machine apart. I said, send me a picture of this. Send me a picture of this. Send me a picture of this. So the maintenance person who took it apart did not even put it back together so I could even know what was running. But I taught her how to put the pulleys and the belts back on so we could see. It was a bad motor. The motor went bad. It got shorted out from her breaker box. So I said, are you down? You want to do a motor? She was like, no. So I said, I'm going to be on the phone. I'm going to help you with this. So she calls me. She goes, how much is a motor? I sent her a motor. And she goes, I so hope we can do this because my husband said I can't do it. So as she's taking pictures and sending them to me, I noticed she had a pink toolkit, hard box, and it was a pink screwdriver, pink wrenches, pink all this other stuff. And after about 2 or 3 days of just working an hour in here, an hour in there, and me giving her homework, she calls me, jumping for joy. Scott, it worked. About a week later, I got my very own pink toolkit in the mail from her. So we still exchange messages, and she goes, what can I do for you? Because I'd chewed up a lot of your time. I said, this is what we do with our machines, but you can remind your corporate office that this is what we do. She got the machine returned too, and that machine is still running. Candace, in Utah.
What a great story. And I think that's going to be a perfect place for us to end.
Yep.
I want to thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
You're a great storyteller. You have a great company. I'm very impressed with all the things that I've heard in this conversation and outside. So I wish you all the success.
Weren't you supposed to ask me something?
It's coming.
Okay.
The way I like to end this is there's no right or wrong answer, and you know. What's good, Doe?
I am in sunny California. I just had some delicious pizza made for yourself. I'm getting to engage with somebody who's got a vision and a plan and is excited about it right now and desired to push forward. So just keep that fight. It's good to see that stuff, because with all the stuff that goes on, a lot of people will lose that drive. They'll lose that vision. They just want to blend in. Don't blend in. That's what's good, though.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Scott, thank you so much for being on the show. I really loved learning from you. I love the stories you shared, and I have a lot of respect for all of the work that you put in to keep this company going. I can't wait to see what you and your family accomplish in the years to come. To you, the listener, if you are in the market to saving some cheddar, reach out to Scott. But more importantly, just reach out to Scott and let him know what's good, though. I honestly, if I had the space for this thing in my house, it would save me so much time for my catering events. And you know what? I do need to remodel my garage one more time. And I think I can find some space, but I got to get to that time and place first. But if you have the space and you have the need to shred some cheese, reach out to Scott, let him know it's good dough. All right. I appreciate you for listening. I saw recently that people have been leaving ratings on Apple Podcasts, and I haven't asked that of you all for a while. So if you're free and you haven't done it yet, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, like it on YouTube. If you haven't given it a like there, follow the show, subscribe, all of that good stuff. I appreciate it so much. I love you. Till next time, peace.